The banished Duke Senior expounds on the wonders of life in the forest. He tells his associates that he prefers forest dwelling to the painted pomp of courtly existence. He reminds them that their existence in Arden is free from danger and that their greatest worry here is nothing worse than the cold winter wind. The woods provide Duke Senior with everything he needs, from conversation to education to spiritual edification, for he finds tongues in trees, books in the running brooks, sermons in stones, and good in everything. Lord Emmons agrees with him. The Duke suggests that they hunt some venison, but he cannot help but mourn the fate of the deer, who, though natives of Arden, are violently slaughtered. One lord announces that the melancholy Lord Jakes has seconded this observation, declaring Senior guiltier of usurpation than his loveless brother, Duke Frederick. Duke Senior, in good humour, asks one of his men to bring him to Jakes because arguing with him is such fun. Pastoral literature makes a clear distinction between the quality of life and benefits of living in the city versus the country. The stresses of the former, this genre romantically suggests, may be healed by the charms of the latter. Thus, Act 2 introduces us to the forest of Arden after we witness characters undergo banishment from courtly life. Although supposedly situated in France, Shakespeare's forest bears close resemblance to the fantastical getaway of a Midsummer Night's Dream than to any identifiable geography. It may not be overrun with mischievous fairies and sprites, but it serves the function of correcting what was gone wrong with the everyday world. However, even with that purpose in mind, Arden is no Eden. Though Duke Frederick praises the forest as preferable to the artificial ceremony of the court, he takes care to describe its hardships. With its wild animals and erratic weather, Arden can hardly be called a paradise, and at the same time the Duke celebrates Arden. He also draws attention to the difference between that forest and Eden or the Golden Age. The forest is a lovely but ultimately temporary haven for the characters who seek refuge from exile. One reason for the transience of this sanctuary is that the city dwellers are, by the play's end, ready to return to court. Jakes, a stock character who represents the melancholy brooder, suggests a more troubling reason for the temporary nature of the forest's pristine state and restorative powers. Man, he suggests, will sooner or later mar the forest's beauty. Grieved by the killing of the deer, Jakes claims that Duke Senior is guiltier of usurpation than his own crown-robbing brother Duke Frederick. According to Jakes, wherever men go, they bring with them the possibility of the very perils that make life in the envious court so unbearable. None of Duke Senior's courtiers agree with Jakes, but the melancholy lord's criticism lacks real sting. Indeed, Duke Senior sees Jakes as little more than entertainment, for the extremity of Jake's mood prompts Senior to declare amusingly, "I love to cope him in this sullen fits, for then he is full of matter," matter being the word for pus in Shakespearean English. In a play that celebrates the complexity and range of human emotions, there is little room for someone like Jakes, who knows how to sing only one tune. Back at court, Duke Frederick is enraged to discover the disappearance of Celia, Rosalind, and Touchstone. He cannot believe that the three could leave court without anyone's notice. One attending lord reports that Celia's gentlewoman overheard Celia and Rosalind complimenting Orlando, and she speculates that wherever the women are, Orlando is likely with them. Frederick seizes on this information and commands that Oliver be recruited to find his brother. Orlando returns to his former home, where the servant Adam greets him. News of the young man's victory over Charles precedes him, and Adam worries that Orlando's strength and bravery will be the keys to his downfall. Adam begs Orlando not to enter Oliver's house. Oliver, he reports, having learned of Orlando's triumph, plans to burn the place where Orlando sleeps in hopes of destroying Orlando with it. Abhor it, Adam warns. Fear it, do not enter it. Orlando wonders about his fate, speculating that without a home he may be destined to eke out a living as a common highway robber. Adam suggests that the two of them take to the road with his modest life savings. Touched by Adam's constant service, Orlando agrees. Rosalind, Celia, and Touchstone arrive, safe but exhausted, in the forest of Arden. The three sit down to rest, but before long they are interrupted by two shepherds, young Corin and old Silvius. The shepherds are so wrapped up in their conversation about Silvius's hopeless love and devotion to the shepherdess Phoebe that they do not notice the three travelers. Corin, who claims to have loved 1,000 times, tries to advise Silvius, but the young man, maintaining that his companion could not possibly understand the depth of his feelings, wanders off. Rosalind, Celia, and Touchstone approach Corin and ask where they might find a place to rest. When Corin admits that his master's modest holdings are up for sale, Rosalind and Celia decide to buy the property. With the introduction of Silvius, As You Like It begins to explore the foolishness of love as opposed to its delightfulness. Unlike Rosalind, who is equipped with enough wit to recognize the silliness of her sudden devotion to Orlando, Silvius is powerless in his attraction to Phoebe. In his laments to Corin in Act 2, Scene 4, he presents himself as love's only true victim, and he implies that no one has ever loved as he loves Phoebe. Although Rosalind is at first pities the shepherd's predicament as curiously close to her own, she soon enough comes to share Touchstone's observation on the necessary foolishness of being in love. As he watches Silvius call out to absent Phoebe, Touchstone says, "We that are true lovers run into strange capers, but as all is mortal in nature, so is all nature in love mortal in folly." Touchstone's inarticulate and rude manner of speaking makes him a true touchstone for Rosalind, bringing into greater relief her supreme eloquence and wit. Here, however, he utters two essential pieces of truth. Everything in the natural world is temporary, and every lover naturally behaves like a fool. But the fact that so many characters fall in love in Arden proves that they are less love's victims than its willing subjects. As Amiens strolls through the forest of Arden with Jakes in tow, he sings a song inviting his listeners to lie with him under the greenwood tree, where there are no enemies but winter and rough weather. Jakes begs him to continue, but Amiens hesitates, claiming that the song will only make Jakes melancholy. The warning does not deter Jakes, who proudly claims that he can suck melancholy out of a song as a weasel sucks eggs. While the other lords in attendance prepare for Duke's meals, Amiens leads them in finishing this song. Jakes follows with a verse set to the same tune, which he himself wrote. In it he chides those foolish enough to leave their wealth and leisure for life in the forest. Amiens leaves to summon the Duke to dinner. Orlando and Adam enter the forest of Arden. Adam is exhausted from travel and claims that he will soon die from hunger. Orlando assures his loyal servant that he will find him food. Before he sets off to hunt, Orlando fears leaving Adam lying in the bleak air and carries him to the shelter. Both Act 2, Scene 5 and Act 2, Scene 6 deal primarily with the melancholy lord, Jakes, who offers a sullen perspective on the otherwise comedic events in Arden. He turns Amiens' song about the pleasures of leisurely life into a means of berating the foresters, and he comes close to playing the part of the fool, in the sense that he turns a critical eye on the world in which he lives, but does not fully inhabit. But unlike Fest in Twelfth Night or the Fool in King Lear, Jakes does not demonstrate the insight or wisdom that would make his observations truly arresting or illuminating. His most impressive speech in the play begins with a familiar set piece in Elizabethan drama. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely prayers. He goes on to describe the 7 stages of a man's life from infancy to death, through his roles as lover and soldier, but Jake's observations may strike us as untrue or banal. His estimation that lovers sigh like furnace with a woeful ballad made to his mistress' eyebrow is humorous, and it certainly describes the kind of intemperate, undiscriminating affection that Sylvia shows to Phoebe, or Phoebe to Ganymede. But the criticism seems ill suited to a play as aware and forgiving of love's silliness as you like it. As a philosopher, Jakes falls short of accurately describing the complexity of Rosalind's feelings for Orlando. His musings bear the narrow and pinched shortcomings of the habitually sullen. Duke Senior returns to camp to find that Jakes has disappeared. When a lord reports that Jakes has last been seen in good spirits, the Duke worries that happiness is one who is typically so miserable portends discord in the universe. Just after the Duke commands the Lord to find Jakes, Jakes appears. He is uncharacteristically merry and explains that while wandering through the forest he met a fool. He repeats a fool's witty observations about Lady Fortune and proclaims that he himself would like to be a fool. In this position, Jakes reasons he would be able to speak his mind freely, thereby cleansing the foul body of the infected world with the medicine of his criticism. The Duke laments the sin of chiding sin and reminds Jakes that he himself is guilty of many of the evils he would inevitably criticize in others. Their playful argument is interrupted when Orlando barges into the scene, drawing his sword and demanding food. The Duke asks whether Orlando's rudeness is a function of distress or bad breeding, and once Orlando has regained his composure, invites him to partake of the banquet. Orlando goes off to fetch Adam. Duke Senior observes that he and his men are far from alone in their unhappiness. There is much strife in the world. Jakes replies that the world is a stage and all the men and women merely prayers. All humans pass through the stages of infancy, childhood, and adulthood. They experience love and seek honor, but all eventually succumb to the debility of old age and mere oblivion. Orlando returns with Adam, and all begin to eat. The Duke soon realizes that Orlando is the son of Sir Roland, the Duke's old friend, and heartily welcomes the young man. Jake's sullenness blinds him to his own foolishness regarding life. Jakes goes on to describe man's later years, the decline into second childhood and obliviousness, without teeth, eyesight, taste, or anything else. Countering Jakes's unflattering picture of old age, Orlando carries Adam to the Duke's banquet table, the old man entering his final years with his loyalty, generosity of spirit, and appetite intact. Although the thought of serving as Duke Frederick's fool appeals to him, Jakes ultimately lacks the wit, wisdom, and heart to perform the task. When he meets Touchstone in the forest, he sings the clown's praises, quoting with glee Touchstone's nihilistic musings on the passage of time. And so from hour to hour we ripe and ripe, and then from hour to hour we rot and rot. Jakes does not realize that Touchstone's deep contemplative speech is a bawdy mockery of his own brooding behavior. Indeed, throughout the play, Jakes remains so mired in his own moodiness that he sees very little of the world he so desperately wants to criticize. Knowing that Jakes's eyes are trained on men's baser instincts, the Duke doubts Jakes's ability to serve as a proper and entertaining fool. Jakes, he feels, would be a boor, berating the courtiers for sins that Jakes himself had committed. This exchange points to an important difference between Jakes and the Duke. The former is committed to being unhappy in the world and will suffer in it, while the latter is happy to make the best of the world he is given and will thrive, as the title of the play seems to promise.